Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. Welcome to UHL2422 English for Technical Communication. I'm Karima, your instructor for this lesson. In this lesson, we are going to learn on new topics for our last unit recommendation report. So, are you guys ready to learn? Let's learn together. There are two objectives for our lesson today. The first one is to define what is a recommendation report. The second one is to compare the two types of approaches to comparison. Now, before we go directly to recommendation report, let's take a look at the differences between feasibility report and recommendation report. As what you can see on the screen, for many people, feasibility report and recommendation report are interchangeable. Feasibility report tells us whether a project or idea is feasible, or in another word, whether a project or idea is possible to be done. Logically, a feasibility report is done before a recommendation report. For example, try to imagine that you are already working in a printing company. Then, let's say there are issues with the current printing press that your company is using in the factory. So you have been asked to replace the printing press in order not to delay the current printing project, which is due in 3 months. Now, you may want to analyze whether it is feasible or not, or in another word, whether it is possible or not to buy a new available printing press in the market, or maybe instead of buying it, you rent the printing press. So again, we have two options here, whether it is feasible to buy or whether it is feasible to rent the printing press before the due date. Okay? One of the elements that need to be analyzed would be the financial feasibility, of course. You may need to look at the financial feasibility in which you might ask questions like, can we afford the printing press? If not, should we just rent? Or are the advantages buying the printing press worth the expense? Or maybe renting is better. You might also want to look at schedule feasibility since we have the due date here. So in the report, you would compare which one is the better option, buying or renting, by looking at the financial and schedule feasibility, for example. Let's say from your feasibility analysis, you found out that it is better to buy a printing press for your company. This is where recommendation report comes in which you will proceed to pick which brand to buy for your company to use after this. So this is an example where a feasibility report precedes a recommendation report. But let's say if your company has already decided to buy a printing press in the first place, due to the company's policy to buy a printing press after each 5 years, for example, then you can straight away do a recommendation report without having to do a feasibility report first, because it is already confirmed that buying a new printing press is feasible or can be done. Okay? So I hope you grasp the difference between feasibility and recommendation report. So again, recommendation report compares two or more options. For example, products, properties, organizations, plans, or personnels. And recommend one option to go for, the one that best meets the stated requirement. Making comparisons in technical writing is very important. You will need to use evaluative comparison, in which it forces you to identify key requirements by translating them into points of comparisons and then discuss one at a time. Evaluative comparison also forces you to give equal time to each criteria being compared and to state how each criteria meets the requirements. This will show your readers how you have reached your conclusions and recommendations. However, if your readers are skeptical or they are not confident with what you have given in the report, they can use your comparative information to reach different conclusions and make their own decisions. Now, let's look at this example. Let's say your company has decided to buy a new two-color printing press to replace the old one in the factory. So let's say between Roland 200 and Heidelberg Speedmaster Press. You would need to decide which one is the best to go for by comparing on some criteria, or we could also say by comparing the points of comparison, such as, the cost, of course, ease of use, special features, and warranty. So based on your analysis, you need to recommend the best option, either Roland 200 or Heidelberg Speedmaster Press, in the form of a written recommendation report. Now, we know that we have to compare in writing a recommendation report, right? Now, let's take a look at the types of approaches to comparison that we can use in writing our recommendation report. There are two types of approaches to comparison that we can use for our report. The first one is whole-to-whole approach. The next one is point-by-point approach. So what are the differences? Let's take a look at the differences now. Let's say we have a new situation here in which your company needs to buy a new laptop for each employee to be able to work from home due to COVID-19. Your manager has assigned you to do a recommendation report to pick which model should you buy for each employee. So let's say the models that you have here are Model A, Model B, and Model C. And the criteria that you have to compare are cost, technical specs, special features, and warranties. In your report, if you choose to use whole-to-whole approach, this is what you are going to do. You are going to talk about costs of Model A, technical specs of Model A, special features of Model A, and then warranties of Model A first. So after you are done with Model A, you will proceed with Model B and do the same thing. You will talk about cost of Model B, technical specs of Model B, special features of Model B, and warranties of Model B. And then after you are done with Model B, you will proceed with Model C and do the same thing. But if you choose point-by-point approach, this is what you are going to do. In your report, you will compare cost of Model A, cost of Model B, and cost of Model C first. After that, you will compare technical specs of Model A, technical specs of Model B, and technical specs of Model C. After that, you will continue with special features and warranties. So this is point-by-point approach. So which one is more effective? Yes, you are right. Point-by-point approach is more effective than whole-to-whole approach. Point-by-point comparison compares each criteria systematically, one point of comparison at a time. On the other hand, whole-to-whole approach produces uneven, inconsistent, and incomplete comparisons. In the whole-to-whole approach, you may tend to discuss one option, then the next option, then the next option, without directly comparing the criteria thoroughly. So this is not good. So again, point-by-point approach is the most effective. Alright guys, I hope you understand on our lesson today on what is recommendation report and on the differences between the two types of approaches to comparison. That's all for our lesson today. Thank you for joining me. Assalamualaikum and have a nice day ahead.